wonderful by the weekend. Again, 20s, 21s, and 22s. All right. Good morning, John. It is Tuesday. That means it's time for another City Council roundup. Last night, you were doing your thing.
Yeah, last night I learned a little something about City Council and this term of council. And I think one of the things that we need to point out is that councilors need to stop governing with emotion and govern a little more with the best interest of the city at hand. But anyway, having said that, some big topics covered last night. The homeless population and the encampments continue to grow. And that was a very important conversation last night that lasted a while about the response to unsheltered homelessness, the report that came from the Community Strategies Division last night about the unsheltered homelessness pilot project and needing a little bit of money, $15,000 to peer involvement and to offer better amenities to help elevate NWO and other strategies in helping those that are in need. And it was an interesting conversation because one of the things that came out of that conversation last night is that got my attention is that the numbers show that we could be in a worse state next year with even more people living in these encampments that have been popping up all over the place. The thing that's bothering me a little bit about this is that, and first of all, I want to just say that what the city managers are doing in working with all of these organizations to try to help is huge work. It's enormous amount of work, and they are trying their best. And I don't think anybody can say that we are not trying to help. But at the same time, the money to help and the places to put people is where the issues are. But last night, there were a couple of counselors that kind of took a turn on this that made me a little uncomfortable at times, which is, well, what about the crime and what about all? Okay, listen, all of the people that are living in these encampments are not all criminals, and they're there for a reason.
Yep.
And they are down on their luck, and we need to figure out ways to help them. So the city continues to work very hard on this. It is not being ignored, but at the same time, sadly, it's not going away anytime soon. We need help and we need some money to do it, but we also need housing for these people, and that is going to be the challenge.
Can I also just quickly say we are coming into October, and we know what happens.
Yeah, the winter months are going to be brutal for a lot of these people, and that we have to consider that regardless of what your thoughts on these encampments are, these are people that are down on their luck that are going to be facing a brutal winter and what happens next. And we got to do everything we can to help them. That's just the bottom line. All right. Next, well, it was earlier in the agenda, but next, as far as importance goes, Dease Park has been in the works for a number of years since the closure of the pool. Last night, administration brought forward their plan and their concept for the Dease Park space, the former pool space, and brought forward this beautiful drawing of what they have planned for that space, which is a fairly elaborate and beautiful, in my opinion, skate park. Now, remember, I was one of the people that went, you're going to put a skate park at Marina Park? Are you crazy? And look at what it turned into. Yeah. It is an incredible spot. And so this has the potential to be the same for the south end of town. Then the discussion started. And this is where now you start to see the issues with some counselors picking apart some things that don't matter and other counselors picking apart things that do matter. One of the biggest conversations last night was the noise. And there are a number of houses and an apartment building that surround this space. And the complaint is that, those skateboards, they're noisy. And I can tell you from being at the marina, I could hear the skateboarders from my boat and from all over the marina, and it's not a bad noise. And a lot of the time I hear hooting and hollering because somebody did something cool, and I think that's kind of neat. This is going to be much the same, but there are houses and an apartment building very close to this space. And so the noise and the acoustics of all of this was put into the test last night. Councillor Bentz actually said it best that his issue with all of this is that if there are noise complaints, especially with one of the apartment buildings being 20 feet from the skate park, are we going to have this come back to bite us a couple years down the road? And he brought up the Current River splash pad, which you remember turned into a war with the neighbors because there were too many celebrating children. And then they had that big bucket that splashed the water, and that was really loud. And what about it's so super loud? And there is a point to that. There is people want their comfort and their privacy and at the same time peace and quiet in their backyard. So this will become an issue. But as Councillor Chung pointed out last night, there was a pool there for 100 years and nobody complained about the noise. Then the noise from a skate park is a little bit different because there's banging and there's crashing but it's not crazy. Anyway, it turns out there's going to be 8 to 10 foot walls erected and there's a ton of trees being put up. Then that turned into isn't that going to block the sun?
I tuned into that part. I was a little confused. I said, now light is an issue.
If you thought that was the biggest issue, no. The bigger issue of all of it was the pizza oven.
Right, the pizza oven. That was one of the big things.
You've got to be kidding me.
Is that happening?
Okay. Councillor Agarwal, I appreciate where you were going with this, and I appreciate the effort in talking about controlling food and making sure food handling safety issues and what happens if the pepperoni is not maintained, and that was the line from last night. This is not the biggest issue.
Do you have that audio? That would have been great. What if the pepperoni...
So the problem is that if you cook pizza for a bunch of people, what if somebody gets sick? Well, then we're live.
Wow.
Anyway, so that was a long discussion. There was an amendment put forward to remove the pizza oven from the design. That lost. The pizza oven will stand. The pizza oven, by the way, is not for people to go in there and cook for the neighborhood. It's to be booked and unsupervised, but it's booked by community members to be able to do events and those kinds of things.
Got it. Yeah.
It's not a pizza oven like from a restaurant that's going to be 1,000 degrees and people are going to get burnt. That's not what this is.
I'm just sorry. I hate to interrupt your time. I'm just envisioning. It's a Tuesday night. It's a beautiful night. And you bring all of your dough and your toppings.
The pepperoni's getting warm.
Let's go.
Anyway, there's nothing else to talk about
there.
Apparently.
Okay.
Well, here's the issue, though. The biggest thing on this was the price tag. Surprise, it's going to be over $1 million to do this. Wow. And I still don't know where that money is coming from, but it is a beautiful design. It is incredible for the neighborhood, and that park and the park next to it and all of the traffic calming and plans that they have in place are really fantastic for the neighborhood. But it's going to cost money, and the question is, where does it come from? So we'll see what happens. This concept, by the way, was approved by council last night unanimously, and it moves forward to the next stage of figuring out the actual costs and when it's going to be built. So you have a new skate park coming to Dease.
All right.
Hockey rinks.
Oh, wow. All right. Yeah, this is the big one.
A couple of weeks ago, city administration brought forward to council 39 rinks in town. We're going to drop 31 of them and go down to 8. That'll save us $380,000. Your city council said absolutely not to that because, 5,000 people responded to a survey. Maybe 500 of them did it 100 times. I don't know. But the survey showed that 80% are in favor of keeping the rinks. Here is my issue with this. You can decide to keep as many rinks as you want, but you still have to pay for it. And city council was given a mandate by administration this year to find $2.2 million in cuts. They've done none of it. Well, I should rephrase. They've done about $500,000 of it. Where's the rest coming from? So last night, after a couple of weeks ago, when Councillor Casey Atrini brought forward a memorandum that said, hey, how about we only cut some of them and not all of them? Last night, she brought forward a recommendation to council to cut 13 rinks effective this December. I won't go through the entire list of them, but 3 of those rinks will be downgraded to bordered and unsupervised, meaning that'll save some money in the work that gets put into those. And this is all based on the statistics of the usage over the last couple of years. So she brings forward 13 rinks. And guess what happens after that? After a long debate of which one is going to be better than the other and which one is better for which community, then councillors start, dealing with emotions and which ones they like and which ones they walk by every day. And, this is nice for the neighborhood. Okay, here's the issue. Councillor Atrini did a pile of work to bring forward 13 rinks to cut, and then we started picking it apart. First one that came up as an amendment was Castle Green. Now, Castle Green is tricky because it is a operation that is run and funded by that community. And so therefore that shouldn't be on the list because they take care of it themselves. So amendment number 1, let's take Castle Green out of that list of 13. That was approved. 7 were for that. Councillor Ayala brought that forward. Then we started the discussion. And 3 rounds of discussions later, Councillor Benz said to City Manager Corey Halverson, this is a great proposal from Councillor Atrini, but you're the expert. Tell us what you think. I think Corey Halverson is in a tricky spot here because as the guy who's in charge of all of this, he's not making any friends, right? He's not making any friends cutting these places from neighborhoods. His job, though, is to try to find savings and at the same time operate these rinks as the best we can with the resources that we have. So the question was posed to City Manager Halverson, would it be impossible to do this now for December? His response was pretty simple. Well, we're kind of starting already.
Oh,
boards are going to start going up in the coming weeks. We need to do something, and you need to decide what you want to do because we're going to end up doing a bunch of work for nothing. So you got to decide. In this recommendation from Councillor Atrini, she's asked for a report to come back from administration on the cost savings for these 13, now 12. Keep track because you're going to need a scorecard for this. What's the cost savings? That has to be brought to council by December the 4th. So this is all part of the motion. Then we start. I don't normally call out individual councillors, but I'm sorry this time I have to. Councillor Johnson, you've said nothing for weeks, but this is the second time now you've begged for Confederation Drive to have a pond for people to skate at. Even though 1.18 people per hour use that pond, it costs us money. Councillor Johnson's argument last night was, well, there's some new families on Confederation Drive, so we should keep it. This is the only topic you've spoken on. There was a $50 million turf facility that was on the table a couple of weeks ago. You said nothing. And now Confederation Drive's pond is the biggest thing. Sir, you need to step up. So the pond at Confederation Drive is not a big deal. It's just a pond. There are other places to skate near that section. On the other side of the expressway, granted, you can go to all different kinds of places. Can we please finally get rid of Confederation Drive Pond and take it off the list to spend less money? Amendment put forward by Councillor Johnson. It was lost. Confederation Drive is part of the ones that are cut. Then it started again. Now it becomes, well, Councillor Pascalino walks by the Thornlow skate pond, and you know what? There's all kinds of little children, and they're having the time of their life. Can we please make an amendment to remove Thornlow off of this? Here we go. So we started with 13. We cut Castle Green. Confederation Drive stays in. And now there's an amendment on the floor to keep Green Acres, Thornlow, and Friendship Gardens. Friendship Gardens, who, by the way, has 0.97 people per hour. Do the math. That means if a family of 6 goes once a day, that's worth keeping it open. Does that seem reasonable to you?
Wow.
It doesn't. Where there are rinks that gets hundreds of people over a course of a couple of days, the one that gets 1 person an hour is on the amendment list now to keep on the list. That passed. Green Acres, Thornlow, and Friendship Gardens get saved. 6-5 was the vote because this council can't do anything unanimously except build a turf facility. 6-5 was the vote. So now we've eliminated 4 rinks from Councillor Atrini's original motion. Now we're down to 9. The amendment or the resolution goes to council. 7 councillors in favor of the 9, 4 against it. It was carried December 4th. Administration will report back with the cost savings associated to be included in the 2024 operating budget.
All right. That was really good. Very detailed. Again, going back to the original, the discussion was cutting 31?
31 was from administration. Council brings 13, now down to 9. What do you think that's going to save? $100,000? Not even.
Yeah.
Not even.
The 31 cut was going to cut over 380,000. 380. Okay.
And they said no to it. Well, the city spoke on that, and you can't deny the fact that people stepped up. There is still plenty of questions about the validity of the survey where 5,000 people filled out the survey, but only 200 filled out a survey about indoor rinks, but that's a different story for another day. The fact of the matter is this. Twice now, Corey Halverson has had to go back to his team to say, okay, we got to figure this out. This is the second time we've got him to do this now. So on December the 4th, when he brings back that it's not as much savings as you thought it was going to be, are they going to accept them? Don't know. Are they going to go with their hearts? Because, you know, those children are having a great time at Friendship Gardens once a week, 2 of them with little skates. I get it. I get it. And it is an important part of the fabric of our community. Absolutely get it.
Definitely here, for sure.
But at some point, something's got to give. And my point of all this is this. You've been now handed a pile of cuts, and you've accepted very, very, very few of them.
Yeah.
So when you look at $1 million for Dease and all of these things that are still going to come in the 2024 budget, how are you going to afford any of it? I don't get it. At some point, this council is going to have to start cutting something. Brian Hamilton, again, stepped up last night and says, I agree that we got to cut some of these rinks. Which ones, we don't know. Let's see what the savings are. So he's right. But this is the second time you've got administration to do this.
So, again, you're saying feelings and emotions came into play during...
Absolutely. My neighborhood, my neighborhood. It doesn't matter about your neighborhood. It's about the community as a whole. And I realize you're not going to be super popular with some of these decisions. But at the end of the day, you're short money.
Yeah.
A lot of money. And these little projects add up if you do enough of them. But you've said no to all of them so far. At some point, you got to come up with the money somewhere.
And when you throw out these numbers and stats that says, an average of one person uses it per day or per hour or whatever, that, like, you sit there and say, really?
Yeah. And then you look at some of the aborted rinks in Westford and the Northwood Playfield. There's tons of people. Absolutely. Spend your time and your money making those rinks great. And that was Manager Halverson's argument last night. Hey, if we take resources off of the Confederation Drive pond and put more resources into these bigger rinks that are more popular, we're going to have better ice. Yeah. Safer for the kids. The season's going to be a little longer. There's all these good things. But they got to agree to it. And this council, again last night, I don't get it. You went 13-0 for a $50 million turf facility. But last night, you're 6-5, 7-4. You can't get together on cutting a rink, a pond.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's going to be a tough couple of months.
So if these 9 outdoor rinks, that's official, all that stuff, it becomes a season of adjustments for families. You're going to just have to find another one, and hopefully one's close by. I mean, what do you do?
We'll see what happens on December 4th when that report comes back to council.
All right.
It was a difficult night. Ended at about 10:30 last night. It was too late for me to watch Below Deck, so I had to go to bed.
All right.
I am off next week, so what happens Monday night is we'll see. But I will be watching from afar, and if something big happens, I'll be back.
All right. Thanks, John. And a recap of this City Council Roundup you'll find on our website, 999thebay.ca.